Okay, man. So it's finally here. We got the NBA Finals finally about to take place tonight, which is June 6th. This feels like the biggest amount of buildup we've had for the finals in a really, really long time. It's almost been a whole week since we've been able to watch the NBA. So if this goes 7 games, it's going to end on June 23rd. So this would almost make it if it does go 7 games, this will be the deepest they've ever played, into June. I think the latest the finals ever ended was June 25th in '99 because of the lockout. But yeah, man, it's the month of June. The NBA Finals, the nice weather. This is a couple of the reasons why June is the best month of the year. But man, we got the Dallas Mavericks taking on the Boston Celtics. So, yeah, I mean, I could tell a lot of people were really excited about Dallas. I really thought, whoever was going to win that matchup between the Clippers and Dallas was possibly going to get to the finals, and it ended up being Dallas. So, yeah, I mean, they're exciting to watch. The Luka and Kyrie combination has worked out, I think much better, than anticipated. I think a lot of it has to do with roster construction. They really kind of, built the roster ideally the way it needed to be built, to make it work. Because last year I wasn't crazy about the combination. I've had a couple of friends telling me that this is going to work because Kyrie, can play off the ball and he does not mind being the second scoring option, which is true. But there was a game last year it was actually at Atlanta and they lost the game. I think it went into overtime, and I said to myself, "This is just bullshit." I said, "This feels like they're every time they go up and down the court, it feels like it's Luka's turn or then it's Kyrie's turn." So I wasn't confident about it, and I was a little bit shocked that they gave Kyrie, the 3-year extension and the amount of money that he got. But I understand they gave up a lot to get him. They gave up, a lot to get Kyrie, when you look back on it. So, but hey, man, it's been really, really, really fun to watch in terms of Dallas. I think what makes them really, really good is, I think that's all you really need in today's NBA. You need 2 scoring options, and then everything else is just, filling the gaps with perimeter shooting, defense, and then rim protection. And then Dallas had, pretty much all of it. So obviously, the Lively and Gafford additions were huge. But I think when I'm watching the playoffs now, what really, really made them, work so well is, when you blitz Kyrie and Luka, they're able to kind of penetrate, decelerate, and then when you do, if you blitz them a little bit too deep, they could throw the lob to either Lively, Gafford, PJ Washington, whoever. And I think that's what made it work so well. Like, it's the total opposite of Phoenix, where if you look at Phoenix, you see a lack of point guard play, a lack of penetration, and then also the lack of rim protection. And someone like Nurkic, he's not athletic enough to just catch a lob and flush it the way someone like Lively can. And Lively was, just such a great draft pick for them when you look back on it. So, yeah, Dallas really shocked the shit out of a lot of people. With the Celtics, when you're looking at the Celtics coming into the finals here, it's almost like they got here by default. They got some easy breaks, no doubt about it, but give them credit. I think they played extremely well. Even without Porzingis, that was really the only thing I was on the money about. I was totally wrong about the Clippers and the Bucks, being in the finals. Kawhi, played very little, and then Giannis didn't play at all. And then Dame got hurt as well, so that totally nixed, what I thought should have been the finals if everybody was healthy with the Clippers and the Bucks. But the way it's looking right now, I don't know if that'll ever be the finals. But, the only thing I was really dead on the money about was Porzingis. I said, I just don't see him playing deep into the playoffs. I just don't think he's that durable. I could just see something happening, and it's exactly what happened. I think he had a calf strain against Miami, and he hasn't played since. But other than that, I think the Celtics got some easy breaks, for them not to have to go up against Jimmy in the rematch. That series was not competitive outside of the game 2, which Miami was awesome in that game, but every other game was just not competitive. In the second round, that was frustrating, man, because a lot of people just thought that series was going to be a joke. But when you watch game two and you watch how good Donovan Mitchell played, you say to yourself, holy shit, this Cleveland team, Donovan Mitchell was playing so good. And then all of a sudden he gets hurt and it totally changes the series. So yeah, I definitely feel like they got an easy break there. Jared Allen went down. I think that could have been a hell of a series. But once Mitchell was out of the equation, for as competitive as Cleveland was, you just knew the Celtics were going to win that series. And then when you look back at the Indiana series, man, it just shows you how quickly the series changed because, the Indiana gave away game one. I thought the Celtics looked tight in that game. I thought Jalen, especially Jalen Brown, like I'll give him credit. He made the big three. He had an awesome game. But when you look at that game, they looked a little bit tight. They looked tight the way they looked against Miami, the previous year. Indiana played such an awesome game. Like it almost felt like, them playing the Knicks really got them ready for the Celtics. And they just totally gave away game one. That Nembhard pass out of bounds to Siakam where he's running out of bounds and Jalen Brown's able to deflect it off of him. That changed the whole series. And then when you get Halliburton getting injured, that just shows you how quickly that series changed. It ended up being a sweep. And it's funny because I think if Indiana won that game and Halliburton stayed healthy, I think Indiana could have won that series. So I was really impressed with Indiana. I think you got to give them a lot of credit. And I think more than anything, when you look back on the playoffs, it really shows you how, and I think this coming season too, a lot more teams are going to put a lot more stock in the trade deadline. Who can make those big moves at the trade deadline? Because it paid off huge, especially for Dallas, and then it paid off huge for Indiana with Siakam. I thought he played great against the Knicks, and he was even pretty much the go-to guy against the Celtics. But the problem is, Siakam can't be your main scoring option. You're just not going to go that far. So, but hey, man, we got Boston taking on Dallas. In the finals, I think it's a good finals, man. I mean, you got your star power with Kyrie and Luka, going up against Tatum and Brown. It's a great duo versus a great duo. So I think it definitely has some, elite star power. Boston versus Dallas. You got two storylines here. Let me talk about the Porzingis one. So Dallas, a couple years ago, I guess before the pandemic, right? They made the trade with the Knicks. To bring in Porzingis to Dallas. To me, I don't know the ins and outs of the trade, but to me, that screamed Mark Cuban wanting to, continue the culture in Dallas with, Dirk, Luka, and then Porzingis. I just don't think it was a great basketball move. I think it was more of a, cultural move, if you want to make that point. Obviously Dallas has a connection with, European talent. Why not just bring in Porzingis? But, Luka and Porzingis was just not a good fit. Even them asking, Luka about Porzingis, he just seems very nonchalant about it. They told, I think Rick Carlisle told Porzingis, just spot up in the corner the whole time. And there's going to be absolutely no, movement in terms of Porzingis being able to, showcase what he could do. It was just a bad fit because Porzingis isn't a great, rim protector, in most cases, and he's not going to be, someone that's going to post up and take the ball to the basket. So in some ways, I think Porzingis and Luka kind of got in each other's way, and you almost get the feeling like Porzingis did not enjoy playing with Luka, and that led to Porzingis going to Washington. And now he ends up in Boston, where it's been a terrific fit. He's coming in there with the calf strain. I wouldn't be worried about this. I think he had the perfect amount of time to heal from the calf strain. I don't think it was as serious as Kevin Durant's strain when he got injured against the Rockets a couple years ago with Golden State. So I think Porzingis would be fine. And plus, he's not going to have to do that much. Even if they use him as a decoy, he's going to be on the perimeter a lot. But at the same time, the Celtics ball movement, it fits Porzingis a little bit better, where it's not just him just standing around. It's basically predicated on just a lot of spacing and a lot of movement. And I think Porzingis will be We'll definitely be fine. But at the same time, I think the Celtics have really proven that the Porzingis injury is not going to make or break them. I think what's more valuable to them is just Drew Holiday. I think Drew Holiday's defense, just the way he was able to come up with steals at the end of the game, the dexterity, the fact that you could put the ball in his hands, whenever Tatum and Brown get tight. I think that's been the more valuable asset to Boston. But, Porzingis is just going to be an added bonus, no matter how you look at it. But it's an interesting storyline there because, Cuban really thought Porzingis would be a great fit for Dallas because, just because he's European or just because he's marketable or whatever. But it just was Luka and Porzingis was just a horrible fit. No matter how you look at it. So it's funny that they're in the finals now. So it's cool. And then the other storyline is obviously Kyrie. Kyrie is going up against Boston, where it really, everything was cool at first, from what I remember. I thought they got off to a great start. I think they had the best record in the league, 2017, 2018, when Kyrie first got there. I think the Gordon Hayward injury was the first crack. He got injured right away, and that kind of derailed, this fantasy, team that they were going to have. But Kyrie played really, really well, that first year. But then he got injured for the playoffs, and then Tatum and Brown, were able to, they were able to take LeBron to a game 7. And then at that time, I thought they got a little bit greedy. I think Tatum and Brown, realized that they could be, the two max players without Kyrie. And when Kyrie came back, it seemed like they were a little bit reluctant just to give him the keys. And then, when Hayward came back, it didn't seem like Kyrie and Hayward were on the same page. And, the Brad Stevens thing is really, really interesting because it was almost like Kyrie was like, oh, Brad Stevens is a genius. When you have a mind like Brad, the sky's the limit for us. And then as the seasons wore on, you could just tell Kyrie and Brad Stevens weren't, a great fit together. I think Brad Stevens is very much more of a college coach in terms of his philosophies. And, he's done a better job at compared to anybody of incorporating, some of the principles from the college game into the NBA. And I just don't think it was, him and Kyrie, probably just weren't a great fit. And then, obviously Kyrie lying to Boston, telling them he plans on re-signing, and then he doesn't. And, that was probably, the moodiest and the most negative I've ever seen Kyrie. Just that exodus from Boston when they got beat by the Bucks in 2019. He just didn't play well in that series. I just don't think, Kyrie as the main scoring option really, really worked. And I think that was just, proof that, Kyrie needs to be a two guard, the second fiddle, very much like, a little bit different than Iverson. I love the Kyrie and Iverson comparisons, but at the same time, when you look at what Kyrie did with LeBron, and then you look at what he's doing with Luka, it's just definitely the best way to utilize Kyrie, to have him be the second scoring option when your main guy gets doubled or tripled or, blitzed. That really lets Kyrie do his thing. I think him being the point guard, doing what Luka does, it's a little bit of an unnatural fit. So they've definitely, Kyrie definitely, in Boston in that situation, it just wasn't the best fit for everybody. And, the Celtics were able to get back, to the finals, without him. So I think it worked out for, both parties in terms of Kyrie and the Celtics, when you look back on it. But, in terms of the actual series here with Dallas and Boston, it's really, really interesting. So I'm looking at the odds right here. It's the Dallas is actually, according to Vegas, according to Bill Simmons, he was talking about how Dallas is actually the third biggest underdog in NBA history with in the NBA Finals, which is really, really surprising to me. I really do not think either team should be favored. I think it's a total. But when you look at how well Dallas has played and you look at the breaks the Celtics got, I think it's pretty much a wash. I think it's a very unpredictable series. I don't think either team should be favored. Dallas is really an underdog here. Like the only team that was considered a bigger underdog was the 2004 Pistons. Is that really really true? And it's funny. That was this. So when you look back at that Pistons and Lakers series from 2004, like the casual fan would have said that the Lakers are the overwhelming favorite, but the diehard, basketball aficionado should have known better there. So it's I don't know. I wouldn't pay attention to these odds that much. I think what Dallas has done at the trade deadline is definitely being overlooked. I think too many people are looking at their record. I think too many people are looking at their seeding. Just the way they've been, dominant in the playoffs. I think that should show you that they should definitely not be the underdog here. Um, what makes the series really unpredictable to me is Drew Holiday. I think if the Celtics did not have Drew Holiday, I think Dallas would have a much easier time defeating them. But when you're looking at the Celtics right now, what still really worries me about them, and give Jalen Brown credit, Jalen Brown won the MVP in the Eastern Conference Finals. I think he hit some big shots. He's definitely gotten better. He's definitely lived up to his contract. I think he's in great shape. He's tall. He's athletic. Him and Tatum have really become a great 1-2 punch. But I still have like kind of the same worries about Tatum and Brown. I think both guys want to be the man. I think both guys could get extremely trigger happy, especially Boston. I think when you look at the Celtics, I think, the weakness to me is sometimes they're so spread out on the 3-point line that they become very easy to defend, especially when the 3-pointers aren't going. They just become very one-on-one oriented. And I think that's why they lay these eggs against Miami, against Cleveland, and, almost against Indiana. Like they should have lost that game. So, I'm still a little bit skeptical about Tatum's motor. I'm still a little bit skeptical about, Brown's unselfishness. Like he comes off as one of these guys that I think they both want to be the man. I mean, I wouldn't make too much of the MVP stuff. That's one of the worst things about sports for me is the jealousy over who won the MVP. It's like, who cares? You got to the NBA Finals. Like one of my, what really, I'll just tell you a quick story. This is my senior year. This was like a rec league. My team got to the finals. We won the game. I had like 16 points, which was an okay game. Wasn't a monster game, compared to some of the other games that took place. And the coach, really wanted his guy to win the MVP. That's the guy he grew up coaching. And so he played the whole game, only played like 3 quarters. So he clearly wanted his guy to win the MVP. And then after we won the championship, my mother is like screaming at me. She's like, why did you win the fucking MVP? Why did you win MVP? And it took, the fun out of the game for me. Like it really put a negative note into what should have been, a championship win. It's all. I almost had a feeling like I lost the game because there was so much negativity coming for her about not winning the MVP. So I think too many people are making too much of, Tatum's reaction to Jalen Brown winning the MVP. Like who cares? They got to the finals. It's one of the worst things about fucking sports is the jealousy over the MVP. You win as a team. It's a team game. I just that has always bothered me. But I just really wouldn't look too much into it. This is the problem when you have a whole week to prepare for the finals. If people were actually dissecting Tatum not smiling for Jalen Brown winning the MVP, but yeah, man, I just think when you look at this matchup too, I just think Dallas has blown away the expectations. I think definitely like the Celtics have caught some breaks when you have Jimmy Butler going down, you got Donovan Mitchell going down, you got Halliburton going down. The best player from each and every series went down. So I just think coming into this thing, Dallas has been a little bit more impressive. The way they were able to overcome, the Clippers, the way they were able to overcome. OKC. I think OKC played really, really good in that series. Some of those games came down to the last shot. I think Shea played really, really well. I think OKC, I think you got to give them credit. That didn't come off like a series to me where they threw away the series. They just played as good as they could. And it was just kind of like a bounce of the ball in terms of who's going to, get to the conference finals. Minnesota was, give them a lot of credit. I mean, they looked dominant at times, especially against Phoenix. I think they shocked the shit out of some people about how they beat Denver, especially in those first 2 games and especially in I think it was game 6 at Minnesota where they blew them out. I mean, Minnesota looked really, really good, but they wet the bed against, Dallas. It was just a horrible matchup for them, no doubt about it. So I just think Dallas is just coming in, clicking on all cylinders. I love the fact that Jason Kidd is in the NBA Finals. As the coach, I think they have the right coach. I think they have the right personnel. They really haven't played Tim Hardaway Jr. that much. I think Chase was telling me that he felt like he was probably one of the worst contracts in the NBA. They played him a little bit here and there, but for the most part, when the games have been tight, you haven't seen a lot out of him. All you really needed is Kyrie and Luka. PJ Washington's kind of their swing man, like their third scoring option, but you don't really need to rely on them. Lively and Gafford have been, beasts. Gafford was a hell of a pickup. If you saw what he was doing in Washington, he was really like the hidden gem. So it's amazing that it took so long for a championship caliber team to pick him up, because he really has been a hidden gem. The drafting of Lively, that just shows you that in today's NBA draft era, like if you're a team that's rebuilding, you're going to ignore the big man. But Dallas, found themselves in the perfect spot because they needed a big man, and they took Lively. They were building around Luka, so the Lively pickup was just a match made in heaven. I just think Dallas is clicking on all cylinders. I really think it'll be a good finals. I think the Porzingis thing, to rely on Porzingis, whether he's healthy or not healthy, it's a risky thing to do. I think, Drew Holiday has won a championship. So the fact that the Celtics have Drew, I think that's what makes it more unpredictable than anything, to be completely honest with you. But what really worries me about the Celtics is just the reliance on the three-pointer. Like, Tatum and Brown jacking up threes. I think Derek White's been really, really good. But, there are times where, especially with Al Horford, too, it does seem to me like, he will be the weak link defensively. He's definitely not going to be as athletic as guys like Lively and Gafford on the pick and roll. So that could definitely hurt them. It should be really interesting to see how they blitz Luka. Stan Van Gundy made a great point that when you blitz Luka and Kyrie, especially Luka, when you blitz him too late, they were able to throw the lob. They got enough guys to throw a lob too. Especially a guy like Lively, who's actually a pretty good playmaker, once you do blitz, Luka or Kyrie, at the foul line. Gafford, got exposed a little bit, but still, it should be really, really interesting. It'll be a great finals. It definitely will. I think you got star power. I think you got storylines. There's this whole thing with Kyrie not working out in Boston, Brad Stevens becoming the GM. You had a lot of issues there. Jaylen Brown's been very outspoken about some of the stuff that goes on in Boston. So you do have a little bit of, non-basketball storylines too that I don't totally want to dive into, but it should be a lot of fun. I just want to, talk about some of the stuff that went down in the playoffs. I think overall, when you're looking at the Eastern Conference, just the way the Celtics got there, kind of anticlimactic, kind of disappointing. But I think the playoffs were a lot of fun, especially for the Knicks. I think the Knicks were definitely the highlight of the playoffs. I think the series against the Sixers was highly entertaining. Every game, came down to the last second. Both teams threw away a couple of games. But hey, Maxey really earned my respect. He's a great kid. He's a hard worker. He had some tremendous theatrics at Madison Square Garden that, brought back shades of Reggie Miller. It's almost like he captured, memories of the past with the 4-point play and then the long distance threes. It was really, really something special. And they actually won that game, right? So, Brunson didn't play particularly well at the beginning of the Sixers series, but I think as the series went on, he got better and better. I think DiVincenzo was great. Josh Hart was great. Anunoby was really, really good in that series as well. So I think what really hurt the Knicks for me was, just the lack of depth. Look, man, you can't get to the finals when you have the whole team getting injured. Josh Hart gets the abdominal strain. Even DiVincenzo went down in the last game. Brunson breaks his hand. Anunoby has the hamstring strain. I mean, just way too many injuries, maybe too many minutes. I think more than anything, the Knicks just got to rebuild the bench. But you can't knock the effort though. I love what I saw. I think DiVincenzo, Josh Hart, the Villanova trio, was really, really awesome. They gave you some great moments, some great effort. The Indiana series was weird for the Knicks. I think they should have won. I think Game 3 fucked everything up for them. That Nembhard 3, where he just kind of threw it up over Brunson from half court, that really changed the whole series. And then I think as the series went on, Indiana's press, Indiana's defense, it definitely needs to get a little bit better. I think they definitely got exposed anytime they tried to throw on a press. But what really turned the tide for Indiana, I think anytime Halliburton was on, Halliburton needed to go like anytime Indiana was going to win any of these games. And when he was off, they just didn't have enough scoring. But what really turned the tide for Indiana for me, was just, TJ McConnell coming off the bench. I thought he was awesome. He was great. He's just such a scrappy little Irish, fighter, man. He was great. And then, Naismith, I noticed this against LeBron in the in-season championship. He really took it to LeBron hard. LeBron was like, you play hard, young kid. I like that. And it really stood out, how hard he was playing. And when they switched him on to Brunson, I think that changed the whole series as well. I mean, clearly it looked like the Knicks, could have won this. And then the Mother's Day Massacre game when Indiana blew them out. I mean, it just felt like they ran out of gas. Anunoby getting the hamstring strain. Just so many injuries. The injuries to Jimmy, Jan. I mean, you name it. Giannis, Dame, Halliburton, Anunoby, Josh Hart. Give Josh Hart credit, man. I mean, he was playing the whole fucking game, 48 minutes, nonstop. I mean, he played his heart out. But you can't have guys playing the whole game. I think, the difference was Indiana had, so much more depth and so much more firepower, than the Knicks when you really look back on it in terms of the bench. But hey, man, the injuries in the Eastern Conference, especially, it just shows you, man, the human body is just not meant to play basketball the whole game, each and every game. We just need, guys like Kawhi, Giannis, to kind of, I don't know, man. I don't want to say pace yourself for the playoffs, but, not necessarily by playing less minutes, but, maybe spend more time with injury prevention, whether it's doing, calf exercises to prevent the calf strains or leg curls to prevent the hamstring strains. Obviously the tibia dorsiflexicon is a great tool to prevent ankle sprains. But, I think more needs to be emphasized on injury prevention. I mean, it's just that's definitely one of the things that you notice. It's just the injuries are still, ruining the NBA. I think, the option would be, I think the NBA, if the injuries are still going to plague, series and outcomes the way they're doing, I think, one of the things would be kind of to change the rules. I think if they clog up the middle, the way they did in the 80s, where it was so post-dominant, that would probably be the easiest way to prevent, all these injuries. I mean, I think it really would. But the problem is, the side effect would be the games would definitely suffer. You wouldn't get high-scoring games. When they opened up the game so Nash could win back-to-back MVPs, the league got a little bit more, fun to watch. I just want to talk about the Clippers. You see how well the Clippers played against Dallas. They blew them out the first game. There was a game in Dallas where the Clippers were up by 30. So clearly the Clippers had enough talent, to win. But, Kyrie said it the best. They tried to put, Kawhi in the game, and he wasn't 100%. And, the Clippers were just playing with such much more liberation and freedom when Kawhi wasn't there. And Yeah, I think, really, trying to incorporate Kawhi when he wasn't healthy, it really cost the Clippers the series. And Ty Lue did a great job on Kyrie, in that series, especially for the first couple of games. Like they pretty much locked him up for the first half of the first game, especially. But yeah, the Kawhi stuff is really frustrating because you do feel like when he's healthy, when this Clipper team is fully at strength, they should be able to win it just based on talent alone. But every fucking year since the bubble, it's always an excuse with Kyrie. With Kawhi. It really is. I mean, every single year since Kawhi has got to the Clippers, it's like when he paces himself for the playoffs, he still gets hurt. When he plays during the regular season, he still gets hurt. He's got the knee inflammation. So I don't know what to do if I'm Kawhi Leonard right now. And, you almost feel bad that the Clippers are really building around him because he's just so unreliable. Is he the worst superstar in sports? I just think he's the biggest enigma. I think he's the biggest enigma. I mean, when you look at his playoff record, it always takes an injury or a fluke miracle to knock him out of the playoffs. And he's proven that, when you can win finals MVPs with two different teams, like to me, that's what makes you an immortal. Like that's what makes you great. But I don't know, man. I just think he just can't stay healthy, for whatever the reason. You saw some of this in San Antonio, but it's at the point right now where it's just, yeah, it's just frustrating. It's frustrating because you do feel like if some of these guys were healthy, it would totally change the dynamic of the playoffs, especially with Giannis too. But I'm kind of glad that Giannis and this gave Doc Rivers kind of like a free pass, to have Dame have the Achilles strain and Giannis playing with fire. You don't even want to play him against Indiana. That was a weird series as well. I mean, you do feel if Giannis and Dame were at 100%. I kind of feel like the Bucks could have got to the finals, but they didn't even give it a shot with Giannis. So I'm kind of glad. If Giannis tore his Achilles, that would have broke my heart. So the good thing is, you get Giannis and Dame healthy next season with the coach that they need, Doc Rivers. So they kind of dodged the bullet there. The Nuggets were really, really interesting. They finally met a team that they didn't match up with that well. Kenny Smith was saying that the game was severely sped up for Jokic. It really felt like the first game or the first team that really Jokic had a tough time with. That was a weird series. I mean, it really was. I just think Jamal Murray wasn't himself. I think, once again, the calf strain. The human body's just not meant to play basketball, each and every game. And it just seemed like Murray had a bad series. Like he was able to have some good games once they got back to Minnesota, and he looked great. But when he wasn't fully healthy, I just think Minnesota just didn't have the ball handlers that Dallas had, and I think that made the difference. Jokic was still good in that series. Anytime Jokic was going at Rudy Gobert one-on-one, he was pretty dominant. But, Anthony Edwards was great, in that series against Denver. Give Anthony Edwards a lot of credit. I think the Timberwolves played great. Just because of the way they lost against Dallas, there's a lot of like negativity on them. I actually think the coach actually getting hurt, definitely hurt them. When Finch actually got hurt by Conley, because when you're not able to get up and direct traffic, I think it definitely does come into play. But give Denver a lot of credit. I think Jamal, made some incredible shots against the Lakers. The Lakers played well. I mean, they played really, really well. What hurt them was just the defense on Murray. Jamal Murray is just able to do anything he wanted on D'Angelo Russell and Austin Reeves, and I think that's the biggest difference. I think the Lakers played really, really well. I mean, when you look at the first halves of those games, the Lakers were up and in control every single game. LeBron played really well. I think it was game 2 at Denver. LeBron played great. The Lakers played awesome in that game. And then, I think they blew a 20-point lead, and, Jamal hit the shot at the buzzer. He hit a shot at the buzzer in game 2 and game 6, right? Or game 5, actually. So, just the defense on Murray. And you can see it in the regular season as well. Like how they played Jamal at the end of those games. There seriously needed to be adjustment in how they played him. But hey, I'm not a huge fan of Austin Reeves. Austin Reeves is a borderline G League guy. I know he's had some moments, but this is a guy that was, basically a G League guy a couple years ago, and I don't know. I just don't think you can, put him as your starting, two guard. And D'Angelo Russell, not a huge fan of him. I just think he's got a poor motor. They actually asked him, like, do you look at the standings? And he doesn't even pay attention to the standings. I just think he's one of these guys that, I just think the love of the game has severely, the love of the game for D'Angelo Russell, I just don't see it as being there. I just think he plays very nonchalant. I mean, he's got a little bit of talent, but I just don't think you can win, with a point guard like that. You need to find the point guard that plays with a lot more force, plays with a little bit more skill. Someone that could actually get into the teeth of the defense, like a Luka or a Kyrie, and make that pass. D'Angelo Russell is just not that guy. That was look. It was definitely an upgrade from Westbrook when you look back on it, because of, Westbrook is taking up so much cap space. So yeah, it's definitely an upgrade from Westbrook, but it's still not good enough to win a championship. I just think the Lakers would have been so much better with Alex Caruso and Caldwell Pope than Austin Reeves and D'Angelo Russell. I think that's what made the difference for them. I think, LeBron and AD were fine. I think they played great in the playoffs. And even Hachimura was a great pickup for them. But I think more than anything, the Lakers need to solve the defensive problems at the guard position. I think that's the biggest takeaway you could take away from that. Phoenix really disappointed the shit out of me. But when you look back on it now, what makes Dallas so great is what makes Phoenix is why Phoenix is just, not that good right now. I think, to pay Bradley Beal $50 million is totally a waste of money, because you already got your two scoring options in KD and Devin Booker. But, to have another guy there that needs to score, that can't really, penetrate the defense the way a traditional point guard can. It's just a waste of space, because they need a point guard. I think they need rim protection. They need to be able to rebound. I thought maybe against Minnesota they would have exposed, one of the bigs, but they just weren't able to do it. And it's just a bad fit. It's a bad look for KD too. He gets another coach fired. It's another season where he gets swept in the first round. I think Phoenix really needs. I don't know. Maybe this is it. Maybe KD asked for a trade. They should not have fired Monty Williams. That was a bad decision as well. To not address. Keeping DeAndre Ayton would have been the better move as well. But I would have preferred if they kept Chris Paul with DeAndre Ayton and then Kevin Durant and then Booker. Maybe that could have worked. I think they definitely went into panic mode way too soon. But you could definitely make the argument that Chris Paul is on the way out. And Golden State didn't even make the playoffs. I mean, they got eliminated in the play-in, but they definitely need to. I think they'll bring Clay back at a reasonable price, and we'll see what happens there. But there's just so much to talk about. There's so many things we could definitely cover. But yeah, Phoenix was definitely. Probably the biggest disappointment of the playoffs for me. I think the Clippers played well. I think, look, they were up 2-1 on Dallas. I think if Kawhi was healthy, who knows? Maybe that changes that whole series. I think the issue that Minnesota has is Karl Anthony Towns. I think Towns is a hell of a talent, but when Calipari is not screaming at him, he's a totally different player than he was in college. He's become way too three-point happy. I think sometimes him and Gobert are a liability on defense, depending on who they have to switch onto. Obviously, with Luka, destroying Rudy Gobert on some of those switches, that's an issue. But, Karl Anthony Towns, his shot selection, his reliance on the threes, wasting possessions, I think that's what hurt them. I think Anthony Edwards is tired as well. I think the decision to put him on Kyrie in game one really bit them in the ass. You don't want your main scoring option to get, fatigued, trying to guard the best player. So that's what really stood out to me about Minnesota. But hey, give Minnesota credit. I know a lot of people are going to be negative on them because of the way they just got, destroyed by Dallas with Luka, dropping bombs in that first half. But, give them a lot of credit. Give OKC credit as well. I thought they looked good losing. I really think they did. I think that series really could have went either way. I think Shea Gilgeous-Alexander, I thought he played really, really well in that series as well. But yeah, give the Knicks credit. The Knicks just really need to just work on not getting injured. So they got to build up that bench. You can't have the whole starting lineup going down. It's just a shame. It really is a shame that we had so many injuries in this playoffs. Because other than that, I think it was a pretty fun ride, especially in the West. To see Dallas get to the finals. I mean, I think a lot of us really hope to see Dallas get to this point. But yeah, man, I'm really happy for Jason Kidd, man. I'll just end the video right here. Happy for Jason Kidd. When he was a rookie at Dallas, he got drafted by Dallas. I was actually at his first game at Madison Square Garden. I think he only had 10 points in that game, but still, Jason Kidd was one of my favorite players his first run at Dallas, and then eventually he came back to Dallas to help them win the championship. So he's really trying to become, one of the first to win a championship as a player and a coach for the same team. So hoping that it will happen. I'm actually rooting for Dallas. I think Dallas will win, but it should be a hell of a series. This should be a really, really fun series. Jason Tatum being the most scrutinized star of the playoffs. Do you think that's really true? I mean, it's possible. I do think Tatum definitely needs to work on his motor a little bit, but I love him though. I think he's a great guy, really, really laid back. He's definitely the more marketable star than Jaylen Brown. That's where I think some of the controversy is going to come in here. Where maybe, I don't know. I think Tatum and Brown are good friends. They play well together. But this whole thing with the MVP situation and, who's more marketable, I just hope that doesn't come into play in this series. And we'll see what happens. But I'm going to pick Dallas to win this series. Hope everybody enjoys it. It's the month of June. The good weather's finally here. And everybody sit back, relax, and let's enjoy it. All right.